Thank you, everyone. And I especially thank the Department of Philosophy, Presidency University. It is my university in the sense that I served this university, although in a different department in political science. And I have retired more than 2 years back. I thank the HOD of the Department of Philosophy and other faculty members, and particularly Dr. Manoj Panda for inviting me here. Probably this will not be a case of trespasser in the Department of Philosophy, because I belong to political science department. And trespassers will be prosecuted. We know that notice. But I may not be prosecuted because I used to teach political philosophy in the Department of Philosophy of Calcutta University as a guest faculty for a few years. Manoj Panda, I am particularly grateful to him because after our working hours were over, we used to stand in front of the portico and I put lots of questions about phenomenology, existentialism, and he, perhaps secretly he felt disturbed, but never expressed it. Very patiently, he tried to answer my questions. So in one sense, he is my teacher. Anyway, today my topic is finding truth, Marxist methodology and postmodern interrogations. Marxism and postmodernism use a lot of jargons. Coinage of new terms are there. I have been asked by my friends to avoid jargons as much as possible, to make it lucid. I will try to do that. And personally also, I don't like jargons. Most of the time I don't understand them properly. That is one reason. And secondly, it creates a kind of disgust. If there is anything solid, concrete, tell it clearly in the easiest language, so that your son or daughter may also understand what is Marxist methodology or what is postmodern interrogation. That is my argument. Maybe because once I belong to science, I studied chemistry honors for 3 years. I studied MBBS in medical college for 1 year. Maybe this may be criticized as an enlightenment inclination towards clarity of natural science. But this clarity is very much challenged by postmodernism. We will see that here. But I will not discuss postmodernism here in detail. I have been asked to focus on Marxist research methodology. Anyway, first I will take up a fictitious research proposal. Anyone can modify it according to her choice. I have just given an overall summary of the research proposal. I have been asked to keep in mind that this lecture will be meant for students, mainly for students. So I have presented the research proposal here. Then I will discuss Marxist methodology, and then in the third part, postmodern interrogations. Postmodern critique, you could say, postmodern criticisms, you could say, to make it easier. But postmodern thinkers use generally this term, interrogation. Okay, let them be happy. So, we have mentioned interrogations. In this research proposal, I have tried to explain the principles with reference to an example. The example is philosophy of classical liberalism, problems and prospects, dash, a Marxist inquiry. This example, I will try to bring in the application of these principles. First, philosophical objective of research, finding truth. Any researcher will accept this proposition that the philosophical goal of research is certainly finding truth. It is not necessary to mention. People don't generally mention it in their thesis. It is understood. But I have mentioned it here because this truth is a problematic concept in Marxism as well as in postmodernism. Then research area. We are running late, so I am not going to discuss all these points. Those which does not require any discussion, let them be here. Research area. Then review of existing literature. This requires some elaboration. That the researcher must thoroughly investigate the existing literature in that research area. So there is a logical thread. First research area, then review of literature. And review of literature is generally involved with the study of academic research, existing academic research, mainly secondary sources. Certainly there is no hard and fast rule about it. Anyone can also throw some primary materials also here. But my argument is that review of literature is about the existing academic research, like books or chapters or journal articles. And you investigate into that in order to find out the research gap. And when you detect the research gap in the existing literature, your research becomes meaningful. Since there is research gap, that's why logically you are undertaking your own research. That is the argument. And on the basis of that, the researcher will formulate 2-3 research questions. And then research methodology. Here, people talk about quantitative method, qualitative method, mixed method. Sometimes people talk about field study, field survey, interviews, quantification, measurement, using the sophisticated tools for data survey and data analysis, etc. Also, you can go for library work, archives, exploring original documents, etc. Different kinds of research methods you are going to employ for conducting your own research. But methodology is in a certain way a bit different from methods. Methodology talks about which methods you are going to employ in your own research in order to fill up the research gap detected through review of existing literature. Which methods you are going to select and why? What are the theoretical, philosophical, epistemological justifications behind preferring certain methods rather than preferring certain methods to other methods, choosing certain methods rather than other methods. This requires a theoretical, logical, properly articulated argumentation. That is methodology. Which methods you choose, why you choose, why you think it is legitimate to choose. This is explained in methodology. And then some people can put chapterization. Some people must talk about research ethics under the UGC new rules, research ethics. I don't discuss them, they are quite simple. Then hypothesis. You have certain anticipations, simply speaking guess. What do you guess about your research findings? That is hypothesis. Then research findings. Certainly in the research proposal you don't have research findings. In your thesis you will put one chapter or two chapters or three chapters on your research findings. That is the main thing you are supposed to explore. Then conclusion. And finally bibliography. Bibliography includes the references and non-referred list of books and articles. Both. Reference means which you have been referred in the thesis. But there are many other books and articles which you may think necessary for the reader to grasp the subject matter. So even when you have not referred them, you can put them in bibliography. Bibliography is broader than reference. And it is important to classify primary sources, secondary sources, and books, book chapters, journal articles, and maybe in primary sources, documents, archival documents, newspaper reports, etc. Let us briefly apply the example, philosophy of classical liberalism, problems and prospects, are Marxist inquiry. Well, here also you get a review of existing literature. Before that, you give a brief description of the research area, maybe what is liberalism and its origin and development, the classical liberalism of John Locke, then 19th century individualism, Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Herbert Spencer, Bentham, James Mill, John Stuart Mill, etc. Mainly Bentham and James Mill were considered as utilitarian thinkers, but they made major contributions to liberalism. And also then the revised liberalism of John Stuart Mill of the later period, and then T.H. Green, who revised liberalism with the help of idealism. You can briefly discuss the field of liberalism and contemporary liberal thinkers, libertarian thinkers like Hayek, Nozick, Milton Friedman, and in some sense Rawls. Anyway, this is research area, and you clearly say that you are interested in classical liberalism only, not not liberalism as a whole, not the different branches of liberalism. Then review of existing literature about liberalism. There is a huge, vast literature. Then research gap. Maybe that you are convinced that the research gap is that what are the problems and prospects of classical liberalism, and you don't find any Marxist investigation about these problems and prospects. So that this is your research gap. Then the questions, hypotheses, then methodology. Here you clearly mention that Marxist methodology is going to be employed by you in your research. Marxist methodology. And then the hypothesis, research, conclusion, bibliography, etc. Conclusion is not important, possible in research proposal. Just you can come to an introductory bibliography. Now, Marxist research methodology. Marxism is not young, quite old. Communist Manifesto was first published in 1848. Marx was born in 1818, died in 1883. Engels, his co-author and co-activist, was born in 1820 and died in 1895. 95, no, 75 perhaps, or 95. I'm a little confused. Anyway, so Marxism is old enough, and there have been lots of new interpretations about what the original Marx intended to say. Very interesting debates are still going on, especially about the philosophical aspects of Marxism. I have gone through it to some extent. Very interesting debates are there, but we are not going to discuss the debates here. We will take Marxism, that version of classical Marxism. Classical Marxism means Marx and Engels, and also Orthodox Marxism, Plekhanov, Kautsky, Stalin, and also there are humanist Marxists, etc. Various streams are there. I will use here Marxist research methodology in the sense of a broad general concept. Avoiding the debates at this moment, let me make it very clear. There are several debates. Habermas is still alive, of the critical school, of critical theory of Frankfurt School, and there are Ija Janet, Alex Kalinikos, Stephen Kallenbach, Richard Wood. So many newer versions are coming up and new interpretations are taking place. Very interesting debates are there, but we are not dealing with them. Anyway, research methodology. I have discussed two things. One is impact of enlightenment modernity. And the second one is, in the next slide, materialist dialectics. Enlightenment modernity, how it influenced Marxist methodology. Marxism is a child of enlightenment. Just keep it in mind, we will discuss it later, that enlightenment has been thoroughly criticized by post-modernism and post-structuralism. Just keep it in mind. And then read it. Marxism is a child of enlightenment. So naturally certain postmodern criticisms will be spearheaded against Marxism. That is quite logical. But we will come to that. Enlightenment, let us very briefly mention what is enlightenment. There is a famous article by Immanuel Kant of 1784, what is enlightenment? And then Michel Foucault, the post-structuralist philosopher, he elaborated on this article of Kant. Enlightenment is that, you see, it is an intellectual movement of 18th century Europe, and it registered the culmination of Western modernity. That is why it is so much important. The principles of enlightenment, part of 88, the rest of Europe, and then the rest of the world. The ideas of enlightenment were propagated by John Locke, David Hume, Montesquieu, and the encyclopedists, Voltaire, John Locke, in one sense Rousseau. He had internal contradictions regarding enlightenment, but to some extent Rousseau. And mainly by Immanuel Kant, the German materialist philosopher, and also Hegel, the German materialist philosopher, and also Marx and Engels. Marxism is a child of enlightenment. That means Marx and Engels were very much inspired by enlightenment ideas. What are these ideas? These ideas are truth, reason, science, historical progress, freedom, emancipation, some of the major ideas of enlightenment. And just think, enlightenment is coming in the background of the medieval period. Blind faith, authority of Christian church, feudalism, agriculture-based, rigid hierarchy in society, reason is not respected, individual liberty was suppressed. In the background of medieval period in Europe, gradually capitalism began to emerge. In 14th, 15th century, Renaissance started. It challenged the orthodoxy of medieval period. New ideas began to crop up. Capitalism at that stage was certainly not industrial capitalism, but mercantile capitalism, a trade, commerce, etc. Renaissance started in 1450. There is some controversy. Most people think 15th, but some people have explored that it had already started from 14th century. In fact, some people argue that 1350 is the point where you can trace the origin of first Renaissance ideas. Anyway, and then 16th century, Renaissance spreading, 17th century, scientific revolution in Europe, and in 18th century, Enlightenment. Enlightenment is the culmination of Western modernity. This is the journey of Western modernity. And Enlightenment ideas left a tremendous impact, philosophical impact, epistemological impact, even ontological impact upon the whole world. the colonies of Asia, Africa, Latin America, they experienced the ideas of modernity, although in the form of colonialism. We Indians, we also had experienced colonial modernity through Macaulay, through the introduction of Western education system, English education, etc., etc. So, one scholar was asked, what are the two major processes which led to the greatest impact on world history in last 1000 years? And the scholar replied that two. One is modern enlightenment and second is colonialism. So enlightenment has led to a very powerful impact on how we think of the world, think of ourselves, who we are, how we came, all these things, how we live. Actually, most of the scientific advancements took place during Enlightenment. Physics, chemistry, biology. Foucault pointed out the human sciences also developed, like psychology, psychiatry, psychoanalysis, or anthropology, sociology. So, Enlightenment brought in a new consciousness of man, a modern man. Actually, man, this term was used, but today the feminists will certainly point out that this man includes women as well as LGBTQIA+. That is human beings for their life and understanding. Now the question, the concepts are truth. Enlightenment says that yes, there is a truth, an absolute truth above history, supra-historical truth, above class, above caste, above gender, above nationality, above race, above religion, above language. The truth is there. That is an Enlightenment concept. Universal truth claim. And we can understand, we can attain this truth through reason. Reason is also supra-historical. All human beings are rational human beings. This reason is not coerced by, colored by the caste, class, gender, race, etc. Reason guides us to explore the truth. Here I mentioned Hegel's cunning of reason, but we have very short time. Very briefly I will mention a famous concept of Hegel, that history is moving forward towards progress. Reason is marching onward. One individual can serve his or her own self-interest, selfish personal interest. But in doing so, she or he can be utilized by reason. That is the cunning of reason. যুক্তিবোধের চতুরতা. For example, say Friedrich the Great unified Germany for his own personal, despotic, autocratic, selfish desire. He was not concerned about historical progress of humanity. He was a selfish giant. He wanted power, more power. But Hegel's explanation is that Still, reason is using this personal desire, ultimately putting it in the service of humanity or reason. For his power, for the sake of his greed for power, he unified Germany. And this process of unification ultimately served the historical advancement of reason. Very briefly, I have tried to explain. I think that I have explained it. Anyway, enlightenment gives a very privileged position to science, and world history is moving towards progress. Ultimately, human beings are going to attain freedom or emancipation. Marx was a child in the sense that Marx also believed in truth. Postmoderns will attack this concept of truth, but not now. Later, we will discuss. Marx believed in reason. He did not want that humanity will be guided by passion, instinct, unreason. No. Marx glorified reason. Science, of course, Marx was very much encouraged by the scientific advancement and technological progress of 19th century Europe. And he also believed in historical progress, that the world history is moving toward socialism, ultimately communism. This is also strongly criticized by postmoderns. Historical progress, and this faith in freedom, emancipation of man. That is why Marxism gathered tremendous popular support and strength. This optimism that we shall overcome someday. We are not alone. This firm faith that was not to be found in the medieval period. Faith in the strength of man. Medieval period was marked by faith in destiny. But Enlightenment replaced destiny and put man at the center. And Marx was very much inspired by that. He believed in emancipation. He believed in communism. Something like, Manik Bandopadaya's Padmavati Machi, that he did Moinadip. সেই ময়নাদ্বীপ আছে, একদিন ওখানে পৌঁছবো, we shall reach there. This faith, Soviet Union collapsed, China is following market economy, foreign investment, but Marxists still believe that communism will come. Once I was involved for 7-8 years in the Naxalite movement at my young age. So when everything was in disaster, once I asked a leader, he was a very honest, very dedicated leader. That's why I could have asked him, what will happen to revolution? Will revolution happen? He said, yes, revolution will happen. It is not a question at all. Revolution will happen because of class struggle. That is the conviction, optimism. Gramsci understood this paradox. He said, pessimism of the intelligence and optimism of the will. And he accepted that intelligence says that emancipation is not possible, just like postmodern thinkers. But Ramsey still is a communist. He said, optimism of the will. ইচ্ছে করছে মুক্তি আসুক, কি করবো, ইচ্ছে করছে, I feel a strong desire that there will be emancipation. Anyway, Marx was very much optimistic. Well, now you see, I said that it is my personal realization. Marx was a child of enlightenment, but a rebel child. He took the enlightenment ideas critically. He was certainly inspired by enlightenment ideals, but he gave his own criticism, critical evaluation. For example, you see, that is very important for research methodology. Marx will say truth is there, just like enlightenment. Truth is out there, but within quotes, out there. Ota ache. I may not see it, you may not see it. When we all go home in the evening, this table, chair, they will be here. Truth is out there. It does not depend on the subjective perception of any human mind. Out there. And Marx believed that truth is there. Postmoderns will say that, it is your understanding. It may not be the same understanding with another person. It is highly relativist. Today I just listened to the lecture of Professor Sarkar, talking about, in a brilliant way, he was explaining the idea of Anikantovad, of Jainism. And I was telling him that I cultivate postmodernism for last 20 years, and I find there are some similarities. Although I am completely ignorant of Jainism, Anikantovad, but I smell that there is some similarity. Anyway, Marx will say truth is there, but attainable through class outlook, proletarian class. Just try to understand, truth is there, maybe objective truth, but there are different classes with their different ideological standpoints. A bourgeois will perceive truth in a different way from a proletariat. A middle class person will perceive it according to his or her class position. For Marx, class is very important, class position. Class position. For postmoderns, power is very important, not class. But for Marx, class position determines the perception of truth. For Adani, for Ambani, there is one kind of truth. For Bhikhari Paswan, there is another kind of truth. For Jadavpur students, one kind of truth. Whether the boy was run over by the minister's car. And for the minister, there is another kind of truth. That a bike pushed him under the car. Marx will say that class position. You know, there was a famous film by the Japanese director Kurosawa. What was the name of the film? Basu. Right, thank you very much. The same thing can be perceived from different angles. Marx will say from different class angles. Postmodernism will say from different cultural and power positions, not only class. But Marx will say class position will tell you what kind of truth you are expecting to experience. Class position. The archetype. One class perceives it in a way, middle class were strongly reacted. We all went out in 14th August or 16th August all night. And the large section of the peasants, they responded to a small extent. And the higher level bourgeoisie, Adani, Ambani, Dalmia, Tata, Birla, Singhania, Goenka, around 20-25 families control 90% of the wealth of India. They did not care about this architectural garden. Class position, that is Marx's point. But Marx says that proletarian class is a universal class. These are highly controversial today. I am not going into the controversies. Number one, there is no time. Number two, I don't know. And Marx says that proletarian class perception of truth is in a becoming process, and it is going to attain the status of scientific theory, scientific truth. There may be lots of questions. Marx and Engels did not belong to proletarian class. How did they attain the scientific truth of Marxism? Marx from middle class, Engels from a bourgeois family, Lenin was from a middle class. So there are some other considerations like being declassed. Only lived experience. One day, Manoj, we were discussing and Manoj explained it in a brilliant way. The debate between Sundar Sarkar and Gopal Guru. Lived experience versus the conscious theorizing. Marx is not saying that every worker, say Chontula is a factory worker. That does not mean he is a Marxist. So, proletarian ideological position is a condition, a spontaneous condition which might enable that individual to attain the scientific truth of materialist dialectics or Marxism. That is Marx's understanding. That ideology and science coincide in Marxism. Ideology is proletarian ideology and science is materialist dialectics. Only thus genuine truth can be acquired. But postmodernism will say that genuine truth can never be. It doesn't exist. We have no access to anything like genuine truth. Whatever you say, whatever you claim, that is your claim, coming from a particular cultural and power background. You cannot put yourself above these positions. ওই যে একটা আছে না উড়িষ্যায় সাক্ষী গোপালের একটা কনসেপ্ট আছে না, মানে I am doing everything in real life, but still there is a neutral self, a subject, সাক্ষী গোপাল, which is witnessing my every act and my every thought. That is not possible, according to Marx, because of class division in society, and that is not possible to postmoderns because of cultural and power differences. Anyway, universal class, that is a very controversial concept, but Marx's position is that ultimately proletariat is representing the universal interest of humanity. Marx said that workers cannot liberate themselves without liberating the rest of humanity. Proletariat is carrying the interest of the whole humanity of the future. In that sense, it is a universal class. Another thing is that reason. Marx believed in reason, enlightenment reason. What you see, just in the last line down, see, Marx will say that reason has a class character. Adani reason or Bigari Paswani reason, a reason gulo ekta orakom supra historical, ekta natural, innocent, vegetarian, pure, ekta reason ache, it never happens. Ebare aschi amra Marxist Research Methodology there are three diagrams. Marxist Research Methodology, the second point, first point was enlightenment, second point is materialist dialectics. Materialist dialectics. I cannot do these diagrams. It is not uniform also, not a proper rectangle. Somehow I managed to do it, and my wife, after lots of requests and prayers, she came and drew this spiral. But the spiral was very difficult to draw. It was never a spiral. After 10 times, attempts of 10 times, it finally became a spiral. Anyway, and my son had to give this red border. It is a collective effort of the family. Materialist dialectics. Generally, we know dialectical materialism. Marx never used this term, dialectical materialism. But Marxists did it in a very devoted way. Dialectical materialism is a science, like natural science. It is invincible. We read the volumes, I don't mention any political party here, but we read the volumes, Marxbad holo, Abhranto, Ojeo, Oparajeo, Iha Abhranto Sotto, these claims were there. All Marxists did the same. Dialectical materialism, the philosophy of Marxism. Perhaps Marx, that is why Marx was commented, lamented, not commented. He lamented, thank God, I am not a Marxist. Anyway, so I am using materialist dialectics because many scholars have criticized the scientific tendency, a scientific obsession of Marxists about Marxist philosophy. They rather suggested this word, materialist dialectics. Stalin made a very simple classification. 4 points are there of dialectics, 3 points are there of materialist philosophy. You add them together and you get dialectical materialism. Hegel gave dialectics, dialectical method, and idealist philosophy. Marx did. Marx rejected idealist philosophy of Hegel, but accepted dialectical method. And then Marx looked at materialism. Mechanical materialism was developed by Hobbes, Locke, Feuerbach. Marx rejected the mechanical part. So now what he gave birth to is dialectical materialism. That is a very mechanistic, simplified explanation given by Stalin in the famous book Dialectical and Historical Materialism. Anyway, Engels, in a rather more complex way, explained Marxist methodology. Well, first point is world is materialist in character. World is materialist in character. There is no supernatural force behind it, not created by God, and it is not regulated by any supernatural power. It is purely materialist. You have to think about this to realize Marx's point. Just the material world, nothing beyond it. There are two tendencies about this relationship. See diagram 1, consciousness and matter. A very old debate in philosophy. You know much better than I do. Marxism has internal contradiction about this debate, and two streams can be located. One is determinist Marxism of Plekhanov, Kautsky, Stalin. According to this, matter determines consciousness. Matter is the source of consciousness. Finally, matter is primary, consciousness is secondary. This gives too much emphasis on material conditions. Why the Ukraine versus Russia war? Because of certain material benefits about maybe oil or minerals, etc. etc. Why there is a war between Gaza, Hamas, and Israel? Because of certain material conditions. So material conditions determine consciousness. Whatever I think, I can think because I am a middle class retired professor. But my material condition of existence determines my thought consciousness. That is the point. But there is another stream which is marginalized, suppressed by official Marxism. It is generally known as humanist Marxism of Antonio Gramsci, Karl Marx, Lukács, and the critical theorists of Frankenstein, like Horkheimer, Adorno, Herbert Marcuse, Habermas is still alive. They try to say that consciousness and matter have a dialectical relationship. This requires a lot of explanation. I have to put it in a very brief way. What is meant by dialectical? One depends on other. Each influences other. And each is influenced by other. And one is the emergent condition for the possibility of the other. Simply, one is the condition for the possibility of the other. You cannot conceptualize one without simultaneously conceptualizing the other. I was thinking about an example. maybe it will help. Suppose mother. I forgot the name of the film. Amitabh Bachchan was asked, I have bungalow hai, mera paas bungalow hai, ki jagah hai, gaadi hai, mera paas kya hai? So the answer was mera paas maa. You see, mother. When you conceptualize mother, you definitely conceptualize that it is the mother of some child. Isn't it? Just a mother with having a child, not possible to conceptualize. That is dialectical relationship. With the child, if you conceptualize a child, must be the child of a mother? I could have said father, but now feminists are very strongly arguing that single mother is quite honorable, quite respectable. So, child of a mother, you simultaneously conceptualize the two. This is dialectical relationship. If you conceptualize matter, okay, you say that all we go home and this table is here. Matter exists independently of consciousness. Matter exists independently of consciousness. But the point is, how do you know that this matter exists independently of consciousness? This knowledge is possible to a consciousness. This loudspeaker will never know that the table is there at night also. So the time, so the concept of matter, independent or dependent, is possible because of our consciousness. Try to understand, that is dialectical relationship. Once there was a famous debate between Einstein and Rabindranath. Einstein was saying that it is so amazing to think that before the arrival of man, this universe existed. And Rabindranath says, how it became meaningful if there was no human consciousness? মানে মানুষ এলো বলেই তো এই জগৎ আকাশ ভরা সূর্য তারা বিশ্ব ভরা প্রাণ এটা মিনিংফুল হলো, তাই না? সুতরাং আলাদা করা, you cannot separate them out. That is the point of dialectics. That is the point of humanist Marxism. See the picture? But one thing I have done here, according to Marxism, the influence of matter on consciousness is greater, is stronger than the influence of consciousness on matter. See the arrows? One arrow is Mota and the other arrow is thin, Rogapotta. That means this arrow is stronger and that arrow is weaker. That is the understanding of. Well, then world is interconnected, knowable, scientific knowledge of truth develops over time. Marx will say that scientific knowledge is possible, but it comes gradually. Mao Zedong said there are three ways. Mao Zedong was influenced by Lenin's idea. Mao Zedong had very famous three essays. Where do current ideas come from? On contradiction, on practice. Mao said, borrowing from Marx and Lenin, that current ideas come through one, production, participating in production activities. Second, through participating in class struggle. And three, through participating in scientific experiments. So scientific knowledge is possible. And dialectical relationship exists between theory and practice, subjective and objective, inductive method and deductive method. Marx said that ideology has covered our perception of truth. It must be dispelled and removed by the science of materialist dialectics. Very briefly, I have to touch upon this next time. Second law is, according to Engels, unity and struggle of opposites. Everything has internal contradiction because of unity and struggle of opposites. And third, quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. Third is development, negation of negation. Negation of negation. Now you see, a researcher doing research on classical liberalism will employ Marxist methodology. How will she understand this? Classical liberalism must have developed through some material conditions. You have to investigate the material conditions, the historical conditions, the class conditions, the economic mode of production. That means go back to the days of John Locke, 1632, 17th century, the rise of capitalism, class struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the feudal powers were removed by Puritan Revolution of 1641, and then the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Power was snatched from the ancient feudal monarch by the rising bourgeoisie of England. Economic development ensured that individuals can now come out of their birth status, ascribed status of medieval period. They can now, with their individual effort, can attain some achievement. So individual liberty is getting importance and liberalism is growing. This will be a Marxist research methodology for understanding the example of classical liberalism. And আমি আর 5-7 মিনিট শেষ করেছি, 5 মিনিট। And the unity and struggle within liberalism, you have to investigate into the contradiction. Just think, contradiction within liberalism. That is problems and prospects. Problems, one is contradiction. Liberalism upheld individual liberty. But it appreciated right to property, private property. Right to property creates economic inequality. As a result, individual liberty is compromised. That is the contradiction. Very briefly I am saying, but individual right, liberty is glorified by liberalism, but right to property creates economic inequality. So economic inequality cannot ensure individual liberty for all classes of people. It is the individual liberty and rights of the bourgeois individual not the rickshawala, thalawala, not a jamadar, sweeper, those who are working and die. Almost every day they die under the poisonous gas, under the hydrant. That is the self-contradiction of liberalism. The researcher must find out. Also, liberalism justifies capitalism. Capitalism has enormous productivity, but stark poverty for the working class. Another contradiction. Another contradiction, there is increasing socialization of production process. But on the other hand, there is extreme centralization of ownership. That is another contradiction. So you have to explore these contradictions if you want to employ a Marxist research methodology. And lastly, the negation of negation. It means first they see the picture, spiral, diagram 2. First there is thesis, some idea or some object. Gradually it will give rise to its opposite, antithesis. Thesis is negated, antithesis comes. Antithesis is again negated, there comes synthesis on a higher level. Synthesis includes the progressive elements of both thesis and antithesis. Synthesis rejects the retrogressive elements of both thesis and antithesis. That is the endless spiral course of development of anything in the world. I give you a simple example. Suppose there is an iron knife, rusted, you brush it against a stone. Friction, the stone is the antithesis. If you rub, the knife will be further sharpened, that is synthesis. This is the course of development, the spiral. Continuously you face your opposite, and this facing the opposite improves your own qualities. That is the idea as far as I understood it. And Hegel gave one example. This is the Greek idea of family. Antithesis is the French idea of bourgeois society. The synthesis on a higher plane is the German idea of the national state. How? In Greek family, there is a good thing, love. Right? কেউ তো নিজের মধ্যে ফ্যামিলিতে জেনারেলি কেউই পড়ে না, আমরা তো এখন থেকে সব জায়গাতেই পড়ে, কিন্তু গ্রিক ফ্যামিলি was based on the bond of love of the family and the family members. And the negative thing is that family was narrow. শুধু আমার মেরে খান্দা, আমার খান্দা, আমার ফ্যামিলি, এটা narrowness. এবার আসছে antithesis, French bourgeois society. French bourgeois society means positive is that it is not narrow. It is the universal individual citizens are there. Universal individuals are there, irrespective of their class, caste, nation, gender, identity, etc. So it is overcoming narrowness of family. French bourgeois society has a negative thing also. There is no love, there is competition. তাহলে এটা হচ্ছে thesis antithesis. Our synthesis is good elements of thesis and antithesis are preserved in the synthesis, and we get the German idea of the nation state. সেটা কি না love, but not confined to a family, but spread to the whole nation. God say, oh, I'm Indian, my India is great. India cricket team খেলছে, কোটি কোটি টাকা পাচ্ছে, কিন্তু একজন রিক্সাও নাচছে, ইন্ডিয়া জিতেছে। একটা ন্যাশনাল বন্ড অফ লাভ ইউনাইটেড দেম অল টুগেদার। এটা স্প্রেড করে গেল, ফ্যামিলি হয়ে গেল একটা বড় নেশন। ওইটা হলো সিনথেসিস। আরেকটা কি কম্পিটিশনটা বুর্জোয়া সোসাইটি সেটা এলো যে হাম সব এক হ্যায়, আমরা সবাই হলাম ভারতীয়, এই একটা কালেক্টিভ স্পিরিট। যাই হোক, এইটা হলো নেগেশন অফ নেগেশনের মডেলটা। এখানে লিবারালিজমের ক্ষেত্রে if you want to apply this, you will find that thesis may be the ancient divine theory of autocratic despotic king that was negated by liberalism. Liberalism again negated by socialism. Maybe socialism is also negated in Soviet Union, in China. I don't mention the electoral government in West Bengal. There may be controversy. So the main thing is that socialism is also negated, and maybe a new form of synthesis will appear before us in future. You can say that about prospect of liberalism. Maybe one kind of liberalism will appear where there will be no private property like socialism, but there will be individual liberty, which was suppressed in socialism. Maybe the combination. আরো অনেক কিছু ছিল, যাই হোক, materialist interpretation of history, main কথা।
We can have some questions.
Yes. Base superstructure, ওটা অনেকটা it is like consciousness and matter model. Just see base superstructure. Base is economic, superstructure is political and cultural aspects of society. That is the dialectical relationship. Or post-modern postmodernism is a critique of enlightenment modernity, and there is lot of overlapping between postmodernism and post-structuralism. Postmodernism challenges the ideas of progress, freedom, emancipation, reason, artificial meta-narrative, science. All these were problematized by postmodernism. So all these criticisms are applicable to Marxism. Marxist research methodology can be very strongly subjected to critique by postmodern interrogations. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Basu. Since we are running late, so we can have few questions, and I would request, please be very precise in one or two lines. If you have, very pressing question, then ask. Otherwise, we can discuss with Professor Basu, while having tea. Yes. Please be very precise.
I thought I am safe, there will be no more questions. So I went back to my seat.
As a director, two short short questions. It's one thing to philosophize, to suggest a model. Say, for example, you talk about the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. But what is it that would guarantee that this has been kind of tested and found to be a truth that is on par with the truths of empirical science? Because these are philosophical formulations. And secondly, and a little interestingly, what would be your comment on the counter-critique of Karl Popper, Open Society and its Enemies, when he talks about the poverty of historicism, that this formulation, a deterministic formulation, that these dialectics will move through certain predetermined stages, is fallacious and assumes too much. So a scientist has to describe the world how it works. He cannot afford to be a prophet.
We can gather questions. তাহলে ঠিক আছে
মনে রাখতে পারবো।
তাহলে আপনি প্রিসাইজ করে
Thank you. Very good questions. The shortest answer will be that postmodernism has invoked a lot of serious philosophical questions. Among them, there are the dialectical principles also. That's why I chose my topic. That first question you said, thesis, antithesis.
First question is the scientific status of these formulations.
Yes, yes.
Like say dialectical materialism, whether the world actually follows these principles as suppose it does Newton's law of gravitation or say.
Right. You see, Enlightenment science will say, that is empiricism and positivism, will say that empirical science does empirical science give any evidence, any proof that the dialectical processes are correct? Naturally, science will ask this question. And Karl Popper said that dialectics is highly repressive. Actually, these criticisms are quite valuable, I think. My position is that these criticisms are quite valuable, but we have to look to the other side as well. I do not know how a man can live, man or woman or LGBTQIA+, how a human being can live with two contradictory positions. But post-structuralism, postmodernism will very forcefully say that it is possible. Not only possible, it happens in real world. We are contradictory agglomeration of contradictory views. For myself it happened. On the one hand, I cannot rule out the credit of natural science, empirical science. On the other hand, the Marxist criticism against bourgeois science, that also appears to me quite valid. And the postmodern view is that only science, only reason cannot explain everything. Passion, unreason, instinct, emotions, these are also important. Intuitive knowledge is also important. Dialectics dialectics claimed that it has universal truth. I don't love dialectics. But that is vehemently attacked by the humanist Marxists and postmodern thinkers. And I find quite strong substance in this criticism. You know, there was a physicist, Alan Sokal. Yes. He took certain ideas from postmodernism and published a paper in a renowned journal of science and criticized postmodernism and finally proved that postmodern views are based on fake perception of science. But then Sokal was also very much criticized that he is disrespecting the social science or philosophical formulations about human life, human reality. Actually, these debates are going on. We really don't know which one is an absolute truth, and postmodernism will say that there is no absolute truth. At the center where I was doing my PhD, on a wall it was written in a room, maybe, and that is final.
Yeah, we can now move to the.
Yes.
We are running short of time. We can take only one line question. If last question, one question, one line in one line.
So, if I separate two modalities of human being, one being the one which deals with intellect and reason, the other is which deals with emotions, passions and emotions. And how you said that the highest truth or revolution in the Marxist view, we can reach that only by reason, but Marxism in practice also gives us strong rational beliefs towards the pessimism of that kind of thing not happening. So how does these contradictions like operate together?
But if I got you rightly, that intellectual pessimism and emotional optimism, how these two can be reconciled together?
What you were saying that how Marxism is born out of the blind passion of the medieval age towards God and towards the things that people blindly believe in, and we use sort of our intellect and our capacity to reason to move out of it and reach the revolutionary society. On the other hand, it is precisely reason that is making us pessimistic about the fact that revolution will not ever come. This contradiction, how does Marx see? How can it see?
How can we adjust to this?
Yeah.
Very interesting question. Lot of things of my personal experience as a Naxalite for 7 years have come into my mind. We firmly believed that blind faith, exploitation can be fought against and revolution can be successfully accomplished. And then we saw that the Naxalites were engaged in fragmentation, mutual fight, and severe state repression was there, arrests and killings and murders. These experiences are there, and we adjust to it. It becomes possible because of the claims of life itself. Philosophically, there are certain claims of life. There was a Greek story about Apollonian versus Dionysian. Yes, it's a elaborated Apollonian versus Dionysian. Apollonian generally is considered considered as glorification of reason, and Dionysian is generally considered as glorification of passion. But many scholars are now trying to prove that this kind of binary understanding is not correct. New explorations are there. But my point is that passion somehow propels us towards further struggle, concern for justice. We go ahead, we get engaged into class struggle, we dream of emancipation. But again, the system is far more powerful than we can think of. The system is top to bottom corrupted. The powerful people have enormous power, and they employ this power in order to protect their selfish interests. And we are just like helpless kids in the face of the state repression. So Marxism continuously propels and drives forward thousands of people, and it has been happening. And why Marxism? Before Marxism, there has been series of reports. We know the peasant revolt in Germany, peasant war, the peasant uprisings in India, Kol, Bhil, Gunda, Shautal, slave revolt of Spartacus in Roman Empire. Uprisings are taking place continuously because of that passion for justice. But a very cold, calculating reason will show you that no resistance becomes completely successful. As for example, Archibald, I personally was very much inspired and thought that the whole West Bengal and India and abroad women are coming forward, destroying their shackles, chains against of patriarchy. But ultimately, the rulers, maybe in the state, maybe in the center, maybe in the past, maybe in the future, all kinds of rulers have no concern for justice. That is why they are rulers. They have concern for power. So reason versus passion, this conflict is going on, will go on. Nietzsche once said, Nietzsche was an existentialist philosopher inspiring Foucault. Nietzsche said that the man on the horseback was whipping the man on the ground. And the man snatched the whip, threw him down, and himself sat on the horseback and began to whip. Whipping goes on, but who is whipping? That changes. But this is very pessimistic. This is the existentialist pessimism. This is Foucault's understanding. And Marxism will not accept it. This pessimism. If this is the reality, then why should I live? Why should I commit suicide? If I have to accept this as truth, I have no justification for further living. So I will agree with Gramsci. Pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. Ultimately, I want to live in this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It is my pleasure to invite our next speaker, Professor Madhumita Chattopadhyay, who will be speaking on methodologies found in Buddhist teachings and texts. Professor Chattopadhyay is a professor at the Department of Philosophy, Jadavpur University. She is the coordinator of the ICPR Center for Buddhist Studies, Jadavpur University. Her major areas of interest include Western logic, Buddhist epistemology, and Buddhist logic. Professor Chattopadhyay has received several national and international scholarships like Fulbright Scholarship, Charles Wells Fellowship, to name a few. Her publications include Walking Along the Path of Buddhist Epistemology, Ratnakirti on Apoho, to name a few. I would now invite Professor Chattopadhyay to please take on the dais. I would request Shubhajit to present the token of appreciation to Professor Chattopadhyay.